another player within your group, and ultimately that could spell your demise. So it's a matter of, you know, trusting to a degree your competitors, but also forging your own path.
Exactly, and when the players have a bit more time, that's when they like to think and go a bit deeper. But it's fast games, we're about to start. Hans not sitting at his desk. Some mind games. He's about to face Magnus, and both players look visibly nervous.
Avoiding any eye contact before the start of this one. This has to be the marquee matchup for us as the headphones come out for Hans Niemann. Going to play with the white pieces, handshakes.
Sporting a fresh new haircut. Yeah, the headphones on. Doesn't want to be distracted. The handshake extended. The jacket comes off immediately from Magnus Carlsen. That means he means business. We'll go to the foreboard to see if all the players decide to go the same way in the opening moves. Already a couple of our boards, multiple moves in, waiting for Magnus to catch up.
And Judith was right. Her move, G4 on all 4 boards to start the games. We've seen other pawns pushed on the other flank, and it looks like the players with the white pieces are going for that light squared bind. C4, knight C3, G4, light squared bishop out. And okay, slower start in some of the games, but now catching up.
I'm going to say I think the players playing with the white pieces, they've all watched Queen of Chess. That's why we see G4 for the score, starting early on, eyeing that B7 pawn, the tender spot. The players playing with the black pieces, different approaches here. David, on 2 boards, we see the defense coming with the knight moving forward, blocking the diagonal, and the other with C6, blunting the bishop.
Yeah, so perhaps we dive into Magnus's board up against Hans Niemann, as this is one that everybody will have a keen eye observing. But we can talk about what this pawn push achieves as compared to the knight moving out in defense.
Yeah, very quick action replay from move 1. We did see G4 on all 4 boards, as Peter and Judith pointed out, hitting a pawn. And I would say it's a generational thing, maybe. Often the slightly older players, Magnus, he likes to talk about having a solid structure, blocked games, slower kind of pace, and he can control things more. Other players brought their knight out instead, where maybe that knight is misplaced. It's kind of a pin if that knight steps out, as we saw on other boards, since the B7 pawn's still vulnerable. And if we go back instead, the pawn steps out, and to catch up, quick early pawn trade. And Magnus is thinking here, he loves to bring his queen out early, Tanya. It's a bit of his trademark of his in freestyle chess, but now he's paused.
And sometimes that even comes at the cost of a pawn. This one also comes at the cost of a pawn. It is an early gambit. Magnus doesn't decide to take the F5 pawn, but opens up the bishop, attacking the soft B2 square. And I want to also add to the G4 point that you were talking about earlier. I think with freestyle chess, it's so much about quick piece development. It not only opened up the long-range bishop, but also the queen and the rook for an additional rook lift later on. And now Magnus finally recapturing that pawn and opening up the G line. More captures to follow, David.
It does look that way. My prediction of the early queen sortie from black not coming out. This time, Magnus goes for a very solid structure. What do we think? A draw in this game would be fine for both players, but obviously they both really want to take each other down.
Magnus versus Hans never ends in a draw, is what I'm going to say.
Yeah, I would agree with your sentiment that it would be fine if that was the case, but I will also agree with Tanya that that's not going to happen. Somebody's winning this one.
Okay, rook's off the board early. No kingside castling. No castling to the right here for either side. Of course, still flexible on the other side. They can just switch their kings and rooks around, get castled, but yet to commit. Very solid start to this game. But still plenty of time on the clocks as well.
Exactly. I mean, Hans Niemann is moving so quickly, but so akin to how he would normally push the pace in a game. Now already has a minute advantage to Magnus Carlsen, and that's, I think, how you have to play against Magnus, right? You don't want to be whittling pieces down, entering mid and end game states even on the clock. That is an advantage that you always want to build for yourselves.
I am though liking what Magnus has done in the opening already. You know, with the queen, you mentioned it has sort of found an active square. Not only the G line was eyeing the C4 square, the bishop opened as well. The other bishop ready to jump out to H5, David, given the opportunity to find some targets. It just looks slightly more active for black, or is it too soon to call?
Yeah, I mean, I think black's in a very healthy position here. I don't see any problem pieces. One question will be what to do with the cornered knight, where to develop it. The other knight can come out via the edge of the board if it needs to. There's other ways later, just by pushing the pawn perhaps. I don't see any problem pieces, and that's normally a sign that, for black at least, the opening's been relatively successful. But we'll see, it's still early days. Maybe the white queen will come out with a bit of power. ask Black some awkward questions about this undefended pawn. White will be slightly ahead in development since he started with the first move. Extra 2 minutes on the clock as well for Hans Niemann. That's going to play a factor later.
Most definitely. And now Magnus Carlsen does get that cornered knight into the game. Hans Niemann will follow suit, but they both prefer different squares, so breaking symmetry when it comes to those two pieces.
Ooh, Tanya, it's something that you mentioned a bit earlier to me before the games began. Watch out, there's one undefended pawn here. There's two, actually, the A and B pawns, but the knight has one in its sights.
And the thing is, it almost looks like you allow that and you're dead lost with Black. But then there is this secret resource of freestyle chess that's possible that actually saves the day, even if knight to c5 was to happen. But Magnus says, I'm not looking at long castle as my defensive resource. I'm going to develop my own pieces, take away that square. After knight jumps to a5, though, David, I think we're going to see a quick castling by Magnus Carlsen.
I'll just put that on the board because we could also see a checkmate if Magnus doesn't spot that the pawn is under fire. If he makes some random move, this would be game over. This hasn't happened on the board, ladies and gentlemen. But yeah, this would be solved, as Tanya says, by just swapping around the king and queen, king and rook even, and defending the pawn. Hans has done something else. He instead pushes the pawn, opening up his bishop, his queen.
Okay, so
very stable.
Yeah, changing it up, moving to the other side of the board, opening up a line for that dark squared bishop.
Yeah, that could be an annoying pin if the bishop does come out. Not so easy to defend against.
Yeah, you can kind of see the uncomfortability of Black's king at this point, right? Kind of being attacked from both sides here rather soon. Of course, we do have that long castle as an option, which would sidestep the pin. Would create a pin, though, on the rook after that happens.
Yeah, one way to solve that would be to bring out the black bishop, maybe, just to control some squares. If you kind of see your opponent's threats, then maybe you can stop them in advance. But I do quite like how Hans's bishops will be placed, especially if Black is the first one to commit and castle. White's bishops will be on the long diagonals. The knights are on that side of the board. You could see some kind of strange attacks that Black will struggle to parry.
And it feels like Magnus is feeling a bit of the stress in the position, you know? He doesn't look like he's completely settled in, not completely relaxed out of the opening outcome that he's got. And I think all the points that you've said, and on the other hand of the screen, the other side of the screen, Hans locked in, bishop f2, bishop h4. Big ideas, and the clock keeps ticking for Magnus.
Yeah, it tends to be a trend. When Magnus is confident, when he knows he's kind of in form, in the flow, he's always up on time.
Yeah.
But World Rapping Championship, although he came back ultimately the first few rounds when he was fumbling pieces, dropping those pieces, he was behind on time, wasn't quite at the top of his game yet, and 3 minutes and counting. That's a big time advantage.
If you had to pick a point in the tournament in which Magnus Carlsen is the most vulnerable, it would be game one of a quick round robin. Exactly. So for Hans Niemann, a guy who's been hunting for victories against Magnus Carlsen above all else, this is the time. And you said it best there, Tanya. He's locked in, it seems.
And he can feel it. He can feel the discomfort, the displeasure that Magnus has currently. I mean, the clock tells you the whole story, and it's just not easy to finish development. You know, if you just draw that arrow with the bishop landing on h4, suddenly the black king is trapped in the center. You're not getting it to safety because e7 is under big fire. And if you were to get it to safety, then the other diagonal comes into play as well. I think Hans, the way he's placed his knights on b3 and c3, far better than Magnus's a6 and c7.
Yeah, it's something that Peter and Judith were saying earlier. Normally, knights on the third rank are great, but only when they've got a pawn in front of them to control some squares, to shelter those pieces. The knights here, they're in the stable, they're very safe. Black's knights kind of get in the way of each other. Superfluous knights, we would call them. One might want to go back and use the square that the other is sitting on. They just look a bit clumsy. So nothing too dramatic for now, nothing too tangible, but first threats on the board.
Yeah. But how about that? A couple-minute think there for Magnus Carlsen to find that bishop move. And while the computer doesn't like Hans's most recent move, it was a quick response from him. Now, Magnus is going to look to lash out. He had built up this pressure, queen and bishop eyeing that pawn, and now looking for a break of his own.
And I think that's why he took all that time. Not only the pawn, the knight behind that pawn, which is going to be picked up if pawn takes pawn happens. That trade comes with a big check on Hans Niemann's centralized king right now. And this is the move, David, that I think Hans completely missed when he blitzed out, bulleted out bishop to f2.
Yeah, I mean, Hans, I can totally understand why he wanted to race. He wanted to emphasize the lead on the clock. But every move has a purpose. Every move has consequences. Magnus chose this one for a reason. Yeah, so slightly surprising that Hans didn't pause for at least 5 seconds longer and wonder, why did the world number one set up this battery on the diagonal?
Yeah, the a7 pawn is hanging, but I guess the idea is I'm happy to give that up in trade for the minor piece with the eventual flurry of trades.
Exactly. And we can put that on the board briefly while Hans contemplates what to do next. Bishop takes pawn. We would see some exchanges in the center. And I think the fact that the white king is now a bit open with less pawn shelter in front of it means that that little trade helps black. Still some threats on the white knight.
But this is extremely unpleasant now for Hans. This last move has completely changed the character of the position. Magnus is on the hunt right now. If you can't go pawn takes pawn, you can't grab the pawn on a7. I don't even see a good way to defend the c4 pawn. What's your move here, if you're white?
Ooh, I mean, I would be looking at moves like this one, just bringing the knight forward. And yes, black can exchange everything on c4, but okay, at least you get the bishop pair in return. What else? Maybe Hans is calculating. I don't think this one works out for him. Bishop takes knight would be super strong. You're right, Tanya. It's suddenly unpleasant, and it's the trend, the turn in the game. It looked very harmonious for white. Suddenly there's direct threats. What to do next?
It's so unpleasant that Magnus's heart rate isn't showing up anymore. He's in chill mode right now.
Yeah. Okay.
Meanwhile, Hans Niemann with 108.
He does go for a move. I was going to ask if jumping the knight itself out of the way, it doesn't feel good because it's retreating, and you can see the engine kind of reflects that. You're basically just losing a little bit of space. You're allowing still the trade of pawns to come through and creating perhaps that vulnerable position for your own king here.
It's a free pawn, David.
Yeah, it's a free pawn, and as we showed earlier, white can go pawn hunting himself, but the white bishop will be offside. It's a bit time consuming, and not only is black taking a pawn, but the queen might eventually find herself on a very active square. I am surprised that... Oh, I was going to say Magnus wasn't going to take that pawn, but he did, and it's given a question mark. Surprising turn of events. It was the most natural move, and that's disappeared. Bishop takes pawn. Magnus in the lead, materially and objectively here.
And you see that shift, right? The speed with which now he's playing his moves. There's no pause, there's no indecision there. He lined up the bishop, broke open with b5, picked up that pawn. Hans Niemann now with b3, attacking the bishop, eyeing that a7 pawn next himself. Magnus would just retreat, but would that allow bishop takes pawn? But there are tactics and tricks in the position. Loose pieces drop off. And David, you know where my head's at.
I do. I think white might be saving himself with some tactics. If we put it on the board, if Magnus drops his bishop back, for example, bishop takes pawn, it does look like white's walking into a fork. I'm hoping I'm reading your mind here, Tanya. But, at the end, this is a double attack. White's bishop will save itself with a check, and the game goes on, although black is still doing very, very well. Let's see, Magnus is instead... Well, he actually did play that move to retreat the bishop.
Are we going to see this play out? Will Hans Niemann pick up that pawn on a7?
We'll have to see. A tough call to make, but this is such quintessential Magnus, right? He used the time in the proper moments, and his opponent maybe got a little bit ahead of himself, didn't use the time. He'll be thinking back 3-4 moves to that bishop move. I gave him the opening. If I had just had a little bit more composure, I wouldn't now be on the back foot fighting against the world number one.
Ooh, and the other knight jumps in. Tanya, I think he's got some sneaky threats, some traps in mind. He might even be taking this pawn next just to remove the defender, and he would be able to swoop in with his bishop, with his queen. There will be some nasty checks on the white king. Given a question mark from Magnus, but I think this is a very clever move, especially under this time control. The bishop drops back, and ooh, some calculations needed. I'm not sure whether you can take this pawn. Can you take the knight first? Tactics are starting to emerge. Bishop takes knight.
I like that idea. Just get rid of the defender, pick up the pawn. That would hit the rook eventually. And that's the thing about Magnus, you know, his ability to take these practical decisions in unfamiliar positions of freestyle chess are just on another level. He'll take his couple of minutes, but even if he doesn't find the best first few moves, practically very difficult to find the response to them. And that's how he got b5 in today.
Yeah, and I would expect to see Magnus start to liquidate, right? Because while he's used his time brilliantly to gain a position like this, an advantage position, he's still sitting with 3 minutes. So let's get rid of some pieces. Now that I've gotten that advantage, let's move to an endgame where I'm so comfortable to move kind of at the pace of increment.
Yeah, spot on. He needs to simplify things at some point. 5-second increment is not enough. The variation I would be looking at is the one that Magnus is going to play. Here we go. It's very important as well that when his queen gets hit, I'm assuming the white rook under fire now is going to slide the whole way across. Black's queen is going to have an open diagonal and some big entry squares. Not just a pawn up now, Magnus Carlsen. He's got a safe king for now, and he's going to have an attack brewing.
it looks like close to a winning advantage. The only thing that you have to watch out or figure out is how's that knight on a2 finding a way back home. Just make sure that piece doesn't get trapped. It's kind of hard to get to it. There's always a defense like rook sliding over to the flank A line and defending it from there. I think this is just a very healthy pawn up. The king in the center, absolutely safe. You can go bishop to d5, trade off more pieces, get rid of that bishop on the diagonal at the right moment as well. Things looking good for Magnus. I think he's about to take the dub here.
It definitely looks to be that way. Of course, for Hans, we know the rook's got to move. It's just a matter of where it goes. So waiting for him to make a decision there. Bottom of your screen, so many tactics for Black. White's entire focus is on defending. This game only ends one way. So our chat very much echoing your sentiment at this point here, Tanya, that it feels like a determined result with Magnus Carlsen piloting the Black pieces.
And for Hans, I mean, he's going to put up a fight. He's going to find some counterplay. And he's a very tenacious defender. He slides his rook across one square. He kind of took his eye off the ball just for half a move. He just forgot his opponent's plan. And that's crazy that Magnus can punish mistakes like that so hard. But Tanya, what do you make of this?
Well, it comes with a threat, right, David? Now pinning that d7 pawn, bishop takes pawn are ideas that you have to watch out. And maybe this is the moment, being up a pawn, you try to trade off more pieces, plant your own bishop at the center of the board, get rid of that active piece on h1. Bishop d5, knight d5 would be ideas that I would be looking at here. Yeah,
both look very natural, very strong. Magnus could also maybe start by sliding his queen across, just trying to break in on the diagonal. Most likely, White would react by either sliding his king up, ensuring there's no checks, or I was going to say maybe a later point trying to hide his king nearer his queen. But for now, Magnus does bring his knight forward. It's the other direction, maybe threatening some checks, but also opening up his own king for a check.
It's true, but he continues to find the top engine lines here. So Magnus has quickly warmed up into our round robin stage.
I think there is extra motivation for him whenever he's playing against Hans. He says, I don't want any of those early slips that sometimes I can falter to, not against this guy. So comes out in great form here.
Yeah, Hans going to slide his king over, and neither player opting for the castle that was offered to them from move one. I guess still technically available for Magnus if he ever wanted to go for it.
Yeah, he loves to delay castling. He loves to keep his opponent guessing, to keep flexibility. At some point, that might be a very good move for Black, just to get off the dark squares, just to hide. And maybe the rook will want to come down this open file later. So I wouldn't rule it out, castling for Black. But for now, the wait continues. That knight, yeah, the longer it stays there, the more uncomfortable it might feel for Magnus. Down to his last 1.5 minutes now. Yeah,
the clock is Hans Niemann's best friend right now. It is the hope. And when you go into time scrambles, crazy things can happen, right? We've seen all of those narratives play out. The knight comes back right now, eyeing some key central squares as well. All these question marks that keep appearing, I think you just ignore that for now, David. Every move that Magnus has played where this particular question mark has come up, I'd give the question mark to the question mark.
Exactly. He's not losing his advantage. He's still better. It's just maybe there were slightly more accurate moves, other priorities. The knight is coming back, so I think a good practical decision. Yeah,
feels super logical, especially considering that you were talking about, Tanya, where as the game progresses, that knight on a2 feels more and more vulnerable and less effective. So given that it is now defended by the knight on b5, we're going to take our chance here to try and get it back to safety, centralize it, find a better square for it.
Something just happened on Vincent Keimer's game. Oh, or not.
Nope, we got baited by the computer. I saw it in the moment that you saw it as well. Looked like it might have been a blunder. I think after the board's updated, they go back to evens, so we won't rush over there just yet. That said, just as I have a bird's eye view, two of our players with Black are advantage. The other two boards sit at about equality right now. So it seems like position 75 has lent itself to the players with the Black pieces finding some counters in a way to kind of strike back.
Yeah, very, very interesting. To my eyes, the start position looked a bit dangerous for Black, but surviving the first wave, just getting the pieces out. Often you feel this pressure, this mental kind of burden with White to do something, to create something. If you don't, then things can turn very quickly in freestyle. And there is a threat. Rook takes knight now. The White queen is helping the rook hit those knights. Rook for two pieces would be a big advantage, so Magnus goes back. Also logical, and okay, some small inaccuracies from the world number one here.
I mean, small, you say. That looks pretty large to me.
Oh, the rook slides. It looks like White had an opportunity there to take the knight off the board. Bishop takes d5, get rid of that piece, maybe deliver a check. On the dark squares, black was slightly vulnerable. Now things looking slightly more healthy for Magnus, maybe with some counterplay of his own, bringing the queen all the way in. But Hans does find the key idea, removing black's best minor piece.
Okay. Yeah, he took that one tempo, or tempi, to threaten the queen. But to your point, it almost feels like he pushed the black queen onto a better position for the counterattack.
This is getting absolutely chaotic. Hans Niemann has just picked up the f5 pawn, but Magnus's queen is about to swoop all the way across and give a check on a1. How safe is Hans's king on f2?
He's going to hope it's safe. That's not obvious how to continue for Magnus. He brings his knight back first. Giving the check was the superior move in that position.
But now, David, you could go queen e5 and offer a queen trade and just not allow a check on a1.
And that's exactly what he needs to find in this moment.
And he does it.
Wow.
Look at that.
Wow.
That's why Magnus should have started with the check, get his queen out first. I think he didn't want to put his queen too far away from the defense. Black's king wasn't safe either, but now with the queens off, this is traditionally where Magnus starts to up his game, starts to go through the gears. He's lost most of his advantage objectively, but it's level material, still enough in balance.
Yeah, but not level clock positions, right? This is where I'll reference 40 seconds with 5-second increment here for Magnus Carlsen, but a full 3 minutes to Hans's name as we see another flurry of trades at the center of the board.
I mean, it is a hideous pawn structure for Hans, right? Every pawn disconnected, doubled e-pawns, well, for both Magnus and Hans. But I think that knight trade by Magnus almost felt like a bailout to me, that once the knights are off the board, opposite color bishops, you know what, David? You said it. Is a draw incoming for the first time in chess history between Magnus and Hans.
It should be a draw, right? But you can never count out Magnus's ability to kind of finesse something here down the stretch, especially considering that ugly pawn structure, right? We've got a little bit more coordination between the black pawns in the center of the board, so possible for Magnus to get a win out of this.
James, maybe it's just the year of peace, you know, FIDE Freestyle, Magnus, Hans.
Everybody's shaking hands to kick off the day.
Yeah, still early days in this endgame, but a draw must be the most likely result. Hans has got his bishop on a nice anchored square, protecting his passed pawn. The b-pawn will keep Magnus, at least one of his pieces, distracted.
And Magnus follows suit. He's going to anchor one of his pawns as well here. So now we've got bishops locked in place. Rooks are going to look to maneuver.
You know, if Magnus is able to somehow squeeze this one out, yes, we've said it many times before, it's impossible, and then he does it over and over again. But David, this is just, you'd require a different level of skill to make this happen. Such few pieces, such few pawns. Can't imagine a passed pawn being created for black either. Do you see any hope for a Magnus grind in this one? And where do you find it?
He's going to march his king at some point. Hans just needs to be ready. Magnus's king can aim for the e5 pawn, the central pawn here. It can aim even further into the camp. So I think great move there from Hans Niemann. Keeps the white rook active. He's going to keep the white rook hitting pawns that the black king might be forced to defend. And at the very least, at some point, you might even be able to cut off that king. But for now, I think I would still choose black. Just more compact pawn structure. Clock time is the one thing that I think Hans Niemann will try to use as a bit of a weapon here. Brings the king out.
All right, the king's on its way out. This is what you expected, so now it's about how Hans responds. Of course, the other boards, perhaps we hop to the 4-board real quickly just to get a bird's eye view, as a number of our boards are moving down the stretch. And I mentioned a number of them were in equality just moments ago. You can see their top left of your screens. That was one of the ones that was sitting at zeros only moments ago. And now Arjun Erigaisi has found himself a very solid advantage up against Vincent Keimer. Arjun, somebody we didn't talk a ton about at the top of the day, but a threat, to say the least, in the quicker time controls and one of the more aggressive players in the field. He's showing us that here. You can see as well Fabiano Caruana in the top right of your screens. He as well is taking it to Noterbek Abdusattorov with himself a very large advantage in that game. By my count, he's up a pawn as well as a solid board position. And then, of course, we've got equality in Magnus versus Hans. And then Levon Aronian seems to have a slight advantage here against Javokir Sindarov.
Yeah, but that position's completely crazy. Lev versus Javokir, do we have time to do a quick dive into that before we go back to Magnus? Because crazy things are happening there, David.
Crazy things. He's the exchange up Levon Aronian, but both kings are weak, both kings are getting hit. Queen's on the board, knight's dancing with some checks. Ooh, mistake there.
Uh-oh.
Levon, and the knight goes back.
Oh, attacks the queen, coming in with more checks. The queen jumping onto f6, knight g5, queen h7. I'd be petrified with black here with king safety.
Both players with just double digits on their clocks as well.
5 seconds
Got to be
left.
moving quick here. Levon's feeling the pressure. He does get a move out, dropping the queen back. But now there's an opening here for Sindarov.
And he's going to make the most of it.
Oh, knight check in the air. The black king not got any defenders around it. White's bishop is not participating in the attack, but everything else...
He got flagged!
What?
Levon flags! He lost on time. He didn't make the move on time. And that's it. Javakir gets the win.
Oh my goodness, what a start here for Javakir Sindarov, and unfortunate for Levon that he couldn't get the move out in time. That might come back to bite you again. It is a pressure-filled round-robin day. At least a smile on his face as he kind of realized that he let that one slip with poor clock management. Sindarov, though, he's already sitting at a 1-0 scoreline through round one.
Now, we should mention Levon's final move was a blunder as he made it, so losing on board and clock in the final position, but that is huge for the standings. Great start for Sindarov again. He seems to do that every group stage, every event. But back to this endgame, and not too much has changed. Just one trade of pawns. 2 pawns on the e-file disappearing. Black's king, though, so stable. Black's rook a bit more active. Does feel like this is Magnus grind territory.
That's exactly what it is. Expecting this one to extend as long as Magnus feels like he has a way to win.
Yeah, we should mention opposite color bishops. If rooks disappear, even at the cost of one of the white pawns, maybe the B pawn, for example, it's a draw. Dead draw on the blockade on the dark squares for Hans Niemann, but he's very much the one trying to desperately get the rooks off. Magnus now flustered. Will we see 2 legends lose on time? Surely not.
I mean, that's the story of Weissenhaus, right? It's where giants bleed. We saw that in the first slam as well. Now, I really like the piece activity that Hans has. He can slide the rook over all the way to the other side, start targeting that 8-7 pawn. He changes his mind. He comes back with the king. He's offering a repetition right now to Magnus.
Yeah, end of the day, we said Hans both
Magnus
might be happy with a draw.
is going
Hans
for
would be
it.
very happy with a draw at
And
this
that's it.
point. They are going to offer the draw. The handshake is extended. It will be our only drawn game in round one, as the others concluded just moments ago. So 3 decisive victories, while these 2 will share half a point apiece through our first round of the day.
Yeah, I think a fair result ultimately. They both played very, very well. Magnus with